So like I was saying, tonight we're going to look at this JavaScript tic-tac-toe with a Rails API backend, or I guess jQuery tic-tac-toe with a Rails API backend. Specifically this evening, looking at the Rails API backend part and how we get through that. This project is too big to try and squash down into an hour and actually dive into. So, got everything cleaned down and got our tests going. And this is going to be the first project that is a single page application. And you'll see that abbreviated on the web all over the place as SPA, standing for single page app. And what that's going to mean is that there's just one page where you're going to see things, where everything's going to happen. It's just JavaScript is going to do everything else. So we're going to load a page full of JavaScript. In this project, jQuery is the main component of that. And everything is going to happen on that page. When you click around, things are going to change using jQuery. When you play the games, when you save them, when you load them, we're never going to leave that one page. So in our application, this Rails app, we're going to just have this one view for everything. We can see that there's already some stuff in there. We run the server. You can take a look at it. Good window. There we go. Migration. Always migration. I'm actually going to delete these databases. Okay, that creates stuff in it, and do that. Create DB migrate. Give that a second. So this is going to be our page, and this is going to load the JavaScript, and everything that we do is going to be based on this. And this board right here, and nothing about this is ever going to change. Well, it's going to change, but nothing about this is going to, we're not going to leave this page. We're not going to go to, a backslash saved or anything like that. It's all going to be single page right here. That's what a single page application is in its most basic of forms. We're doing a pretty simple one here, but once you start bringing in JavaScript libraries, like a little bit further on in the curriculum, like React, or there's other ones out there that can load in the browser, you can do huge applications and lots of really cool and complex things, all loaded through the JavaScript. So you just have your JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and it's all being handled there, and you're not ever going to different quote-unquote pages. You can, you'll have different things that'll change and it'll look different, but you won't actually be navigating to a different route in a controller. That's a single page application. And we'll also notice we just have this controller, home controller. It's a single index. If we look at our config route, so there's one root route. It's so simple in terms of the configuration of all of this. There's our route. That's all we're going to need for this whole thing. Okay. So now let's look at setting up the backend, our Rails API. So we're starting from a Rails project. You can generate Rails projects now with an API flag. If we look at that real quick. Rails generate, or Rails new. Rails new, where are the flags? Using Rails for API-only applications. This is pretty cool. Little thing that you can read, but you can do Rails new, you have the name of your API, and the flag is --API. And I don't remember exactly when that became part of Rails. I think it was in Rails 5, if I'm remembering correctly. So this is also good to note and to know for your final project. You're going to want to have a backend API and you're going to be starting from scratch. And this is a great way to get a solid base and not have any of the extra stuff that you're not necessarily going to need. It's going to keep it nice and clean for you. Okay, back to our code. So, okay, here. Our Tic-Tac-Toe domain is going to be centered around the game class. And every instance of a game will have a unique ID and a state property. So state's going to be equivalent to what's on the board. So, we're going to have our 9 items, either X or O or blank, in an array, just like we had with the Tic-Tac-Toe CLI project. And yeah, we don't really have to worry about the game class just yet. So let's take a look at our games controller. And that's where we're going to add our games controller code. So this is going to be pretty straightforward and really a little bit of review for the things that have just been gone over in the curriculum at this point. Active model serializers, using to.json, setting up some routes and actions. And we're going to end up with 4 endpoints. So we have this create, show, update, and index. Those are going to return things for us and allow us to do things and interact with our database. They're all going to use JSON. And they're going to use JSON so that the front end can talk to the back end. JSON is pretty much the standard for REST API endpoint for data transfer. JSON being JavaScript object notation. And yeah, it's just a structured way to move data back and forth based around JavaScript. Yeah, so I'm just going to create these 4 routes because I can see them in the test that we're going to need them. We'll go from there. I'll get rid of this comment. I think we understand that the code needs to go here. So create is going to be a post to games. Show is going to be a GET request to games ID. Update is going to be a patch for our games ID. And the index is going to be get our games. So you can see the structure of what we're doing. So we're not actually going to go to these pages ever, but our JavaScript is going to reach out to these endpoints and get information back or send information to it, depending on the type of request that's it. Okay, so we're going to serialize our game objects, like I was saying, to JavaScript or to JSON, or back and forth between JSON, so that when it comes in JSON, it gets inserted into the database the correct way. We have to convert it so that Active Record will be able to use it. This Active Record isn't going to take the JSON. And we should be seeing, see what errors are getting. We're going to know route right now, so let's see what happens. Config. JSON. Okay, so we need to create our route. And then these routes are going to be used for views. However, it will be used so that our front end can connect to our back end. So let's set up our resources. I'll say games, only index, show, create, update. This little %W is a shorthand or just another way of creating an array. So that this line is going to be exactly equivalent to this. I guess
wait, I'm sorry, did you say it's a param, the percentage?
Sorry, say it again?
What did you say the percentage W was?
It's an equivalent way to make an array.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome. So instead of having commas, there's just no commas. Yeah, it's just another way of making an array. It's probably more familiar. So just showing a different way to do it. And I think these all still need to be symbols. Doesn't really save you much, but it's something you might see. I know it's in some of the solution branches, and you might see it in certain Stack Overflow and stuff. So whenever I have a chance, I try and show it, just so that it isn't completely foreign. Now that we have some routes, we should be getting some different errors. We shouldn't be getting any more of these no route matches. Okay. We're seeing some missing template errors. And we know we don't have templates, or we're not going to have views. So ultimately, this is going to come down to how we are returning in our controller. So we know there's a couple, at least two ways to return data. By default, the controller is going to be sending back data in formatted for HTML and ready to be used in the view. We're telling the application that, we're going to look for a view and render it, unless we explicitly tell it that we want to render JSON. Let's look at this control for some. Let's target our index first. I think that's going to be, we actually have to set up our serializer first before we go into this next step. So check our config initializers. And in here, let's create our active model serializers, just to have a name that I think makes the most sense. And model serializers. And this is coming from this active model serializers gem that we're using. This is a gem. This is part of the configuration and setup for that. We're going to fix that. And we're going to tell this to use the JSON serializer adapter to include a top-level object, and we're going to include the top-level object here, JSON API include top-level object. And then we're going to also tell it which version of the JSON API spec that we want it to follow. That will take care of that for us. If you're interested in more about this active model serializers, they of course have documentation, tell you all the options and what they can be set to. So really, that's all that we're going to need from it. So the next thing we have to set up is our game serializer. So active model serializers by default serializes every attribute of a model. However, in this instance, we're not really going to care about when a game is created or updated. So to control which attributes get serialized, we're going to create a custom serializer that's going to inherit from the base active model serializer class. So when we call on, let's collapse this. There. When we call active model serializer to serialize an object or a collection of objects, it's going to first look in an app/serializers directory, if there is one. It's going to see if there's a user-defined serializer that matches the object that it's trying to serialize in there. And then, it would go and do its own thing after that. So we're going to generate the serializer. And that creates our user-defined serializer. And we're just going to serialize the ID and the state. Well, the ID, but the state is really the key. We're not going to worry about the other objects that are going to be in our JSON. So we also have this created at and updated at attribute. We're not going to worry about serializing those. We're just really going to care about the state. So now that we have excluded the created at and updated at attributes from our JSON, we'll still see some errors related to, we'll see errors because of what we're returning right now. Let's go ahead and fix those errors. Let's just say render JSON. We have to give it some data. Let's follow a pattern that we've learned. Let's make our private. Really, we don't even need that just yet. We can refactor some things out later. So our index is supposed to show all of our games, or we're supposed to get a list of all of our games. Let's do our games equals game.all. And then let's render JSON games. Okay. That left test should be, okay. We're getting our data back. Not exactly what we're looking for, but we do see that it's coming through. The issue here is that we're having this serialized as a string, and it's supposed to be an array. So what's happening is active record is trying to store this state attribute as an array in a text database column. So the type, there isn't an array type in databases. So it's taking this array and saying, oh, let's turn this into, text, basically one long string. And that's how we're going to store it. However, that's not going to properly store it for us. So things that are stored like this, arrays, hashes, any other non-mappable objects in a text column, we're going to need to call a serialized class method provided by active record for us. So we go to our model and game. We need to tell it serialize the state as an array. And now we should have it coming back correctly. So we should, test 5 should pass. And it did. So that's the setup we have to go through to get this working the way that we want it. To get the input and output to start to get serialized the proper way, setting up active model serializers, making sure that we're serializing this array properly, setting up some routes. And now let's go ahead and get the rest of these tests back. This will all be work in our controller. And let's look at what is going on here. All right, missing template, and that's because it's looking for views. But what we want is when we go to these routes, let's see what happens. Oh, the server's not running. Don't think there's any in there. Might have to create them real quick. Let's see. Okay, so see there's nothing in this data. This data is that top level object that we were talking about in this active model serializers. That's that data. That's the top level object that we're including. So let's add some games in here so we can see some stuff. And then we'll finish up these routes. Game.create state. Let's see. There's some in the test. That'll make it a little bit easier. Yes. Cool. All right, there's one. Let's see, are any of these different? This one's different. So we can do that. There we go. Perfect. All the info that we need. Another one. That one's the same. Just X at the beginning. There's a couple more that we can use just to get some games to the database. All right, that should be good. That's 4 games. So now we can see things. So when we refresh this, we should server again, and then refresh this. Give it a second. So we see our games. And if we look at our raw data, this is what's being returned to us, this long object, JavaScript object. If we do a pretty print that's built in, we're going to see just nesting it for us. With this little JSON, we can see a little bit more how it's set up. This is just stuff that's built into Firefox as far as I know. And you can see headers if you want. But really we're seeing that, we're getting our object, and here's our top level data, and then we have an array of objects, and each object is a game with its ID, type, and the attributes, state being the attribute array of the game state. So now we're getting back the data we want, and we're getting it back how we want it. So we need to get the rest of our routes working properly. Oh, why isn't the initial box shown? Which box? The 9 square box. Oh, are you talking about this one? Okay, so this is at our route. So I want to get back over. Okay. So in our route, we have this root. And that's what we're seeing when we just go to the root of the service. Our home controller's index method. And then we have this games controller that's going to handle all of our API endpoints. So we have these routes in there. We do our break routes. We can see them more clearly. Put that down. Okay. So we see we have our root with a GET request going to there, and then games and game and exactly where they're going to. And we're going to explicitly say we only want to return JSON out of these routes so that they're only going to be used as API endpoints. I mean, I guess people could use them for other things if they wanted to, but really, you know, kind of the definition of an API endpoint is, you know, just giving you data and not really formatting it or showing it in any way special, which is what a view would be doing for us. So now let's see what's going on with our route. All right, we know we have a missing template, so I'm just going to look at this spec. Open to the side. So can create a new game instance. So it looks like it's going to post to the create route with a state and expect the games count to equal 1. So being Rails, we need to set up our params. And with that, do our params.permit, and we're going to have state, and that's it. That's all that we're sending back and forth to our backend in this instance. We're just sending a state array, and the updated at, the created at, the ID, those three things are taken care of for us by the database. Several params. We know that we're already going to get a post call to this route based on how we have it set up in our config. And we confirm that with our rake routes. So we want to create a game, and then we want to render that game. Game properly serializes. So yeah, we want to return something. So game equals. So we're going to create the game, and then we want to show an empty game. You know, if you said create new, we're going to want to use that. So we want to return that to be used right away so that we can start playing that empty new game. Game equals, we'll do just like we did in the Rails console, create. Game, this time we'll be passing the game params though. Well, I guess it wouldn't be empty all the time. You could, or it probably would be empty typically. And render JSON, like we did before, but game. So let's see what our tests think of that. One example, one failure. 3 examples, one failure. Pass 2 things. Oh, there's 2 tests for this. Properly serializes the state and can create a new game instance. Okay. I didn't realize that. I thought there was 1 test for that. Okay, so let's now look at show. Show returns JSON API compliant serialized object representing the specified game instance. So here we're going to want to find the game and then get it. So we're going to want to look for, let's say, game equals game.find, and we're going to the ID from the param. We see that in our route. And that's how we're going to find the game. And then we're going to follow a very familiar pattern now. Let's enter JSON game. That should find the specific game for this route, return that data back to our jQuery JavaScript, and allow it to use it. All right. Okay. That's good for that one. We have our top level object, the ID, type, attributes, everything. Now we want to update. First thing we need to do is, once again, find our game. Params ID. And now that we've done this twice, let's go ahead and refactor it to another method. So let's say find game and just take this line, put it right in here. And let's set that as a instance method or instance variable. And so we can not have to worry about this. Let's set a before action. And we're going to call that method set game. We're going to say that only do it for show and update routes. So now, this right here can get taken out. Change this to at game. So now, before this method is run, it's going to go to set game, run this, find the game, using that information from the param, and set it for us, and then we continue on into the method. So it's just like if we were to call, find game params. Let's just find game right there. So that automates a little bit of that for us and helps us out with that so that we don't have to forget about it, or we won't forget about it. Now our update. So we have our game. We're going to call our update method on that. We're going to use the game params that we have with some updated state. Then return to our rendered JSON. And this is going to be at game. And that should be our backend for this project. No, okay. Unfind method set game. Oh, it's find game. That's it. Find game. That would change it. All right. That should be it. Yes. So that is part one of this project, setting up the back end, getting active model serializers set up, making sure that we're serializing the array of the state properly, passing and telling active record exactly how to do that. Setting up some routes for those API endpoints. What else did we do? Serialize the state of the model, set up the serializer, worked on the controller. Yeah. Any questions, comments?
No, I think you walked through everything really well. Like you explained everything, so thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, here we go.
Are you gonna do a part 2 to this, just for like for the second part of Tic-Tac-Toe, or?
I'm not sure. I can say that
Okay.
I don't pick or I don't have control over what topics are in study groups week to week. That's our supervisor.
Okay.
So, there's like, here's all the study groups this week. Pick, the ones that you want to do, whatever topics there are. So I'm not sure.
Okay. I didn't realize it that way.
And yeah, and I don't know if we would want to, or if we can get it into an hour. So it might even the front end be multiple study groups if that were to happen. But I think part of this
it
project
seems like it's a lot more.
yeah. I think the biggest part of this project is really the front end part, and really nailing that down. So I don't know if it would be beneficial to have a walkthrough, because once that's available, people are going to watch it, and kind of it's somewhat of a crutch to an extent, I think, if it's used improperly. So it's kind of that fine balance of what is most helpful and what could be detrimental in the level of understanding that people get to. So,
for sure.
So I don't know, but it's if it comes up, then we'll discuss it, or as a team we can discuss it and see what we think, or what students think. And it might be one of those things where it's just in the next lesson or something, they're like, here's the review video, and it's not in the video app, but it is out there, so you can, if there's something to see afterward. But yeah, I can't say for sure either way on that one.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if there would just be like an intro to it, just because it seems like it's very big. But
yeah, it feels that way, but it's still test driven. So there is a structure, and there is, hey, these are the steps, is what you're trying to accomplish. So, get the test to pass, and, your code's doing the right thing. So it isn't completely like a portfolio project where there's no, a guide, so to speak.
That's true. Okay. It just looked a little overwhelming when I looked at it today. I was like, oh, that's a lot bigger. But okay, I'll just work through the tests.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the music library Serialize. That seems extremely overwhelming at the time when you see 100+ tests. And you're just like, you run it for the first time, and it just keeps going and going and going, and you're like, this is gonna take forever. And then you get to the end of it, and you're like, that was awesome, and it feels great to pass it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me throw one more link into the chat.